Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the Arcserve UDP 6.5 launch webcast. My name's Raki, and our host today is Christoph Bertrand, the VP of Product Marketing, and Kai Steinbeck, UDP Product Manager for EMEA. If you have any questions, please use the question panel on the right-hand side, and we'll answer your questions at the end of the event. Today's session is being recorded. An email will be sent out later this afternoon to email the address with you have registered. Over to you, Christoph.
Thank you, Rocky. Hello, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here today, and we have quite a bit to cover with UDP 6.5. We have just released this new version of UDP. As you know, we have been in market with this great solution for almost 2.5 years, and it's met with great success. So thank you to all of you who are customers who have purchased the product. And for those of you who are joining this webcast and don't know UDP, we have a number of other tools for you to be acquainted with all of the features. Today, we'll focus on 3 areas that pertain to what is new in 6.5. So the assumption is that you already know UDP. The first area will be around the features that we are providing for improved, enhanced data availability. We'll also cover some of the cloud integration, especially public cloud integration type of features that we have included in 6.5, and you'll see there's quite a bit. And then we have a great section, which is my favorite, where we look at orchestration for disaster recovery testing, as well as reporting, and we have some very good looking reports for you to look at that will help you with the management of the environment, as well as of course the ability to have a conversation around data protection, data exposures, and really understanding RPO and RTO. So with this in mind, I'd like to get us started and go into the details of the fortified data availability features that we have in 6.5. We have added hardware snapshot capabilities for 3PAR and completed support for nimble storage. So just as a quick reminder, in version 6.0, we had already introduced support for this interaction, if you will, or integration with storage arrays, starting with NetApp environments, and now we're adding more platforms. So you can expect us moving forward to keep adding support. In this case here for 6.5, HP 3PAR systems, as well as the VMware support for nimble storage subsystems. The feature is a very traditional integration that originated in the enterprise space, and so essentially we're leveraging the storage array to do snapshots, and the benefits include better performance as well as less stress on the production machines. We also are very happy and very proud to introduce Office 365 support. We are starting with Exchange, but stay tuned, there'll be more in the future. And here it's the ability to essentially do a backup locally of your 365 data that happens to be in the cloud. So you can back it up to your local site, or you can send it to another cloud destination as long as it supports the RPS. And we also are very pleased to expand our support to essentially any NAS environment through CIFS. And that's really by backing up SMB UNC paths, so that protection is now available. So literally you could back up files that are on a NAS system, even if those files come from an OS that we don't support directly with an agent. So that's a great advantage. More importantly, what it does, it really allows you to expand the ability to use UDP across a very broad environment in terms of data sources. And finally, as you can see, number of new certifications, every release, every update, there's more. So 2016 on the Windows side, vSphere 6.5, some Unix updates as well. We keep adding Unix support here, support, Red Hat, CentOS, etc. And then UEK also has been certified with 6.5. So for these certifications and others that will be coming, always go back and refer to our hardware and software compatibility list. That's on the support part of our website. I also want to point out that on our website we have added some videos of these features, not all of them, but most of them, and keep looking and keep checking because we add some every week. So with this, now I'd like to turn it over to Kai for more details on these capabilities.
Thank you very much, Christoph. I hope you can hear me well. So let's go into the details. We do them in the same order. So let's start with the hardware snapshots and how they assist us in our backup. So the idea is that the production system has to manage a snapshot for as long as the backup takes. And the shorter we can make this time frame, then the easier it is for that system to cope with that, especially once the snapshot has to be released again, which means merging the modified blocks. So using the hardware that hosts the block level data directly is a great way of doing that. And the hardware snapshot through an API gets basically executed here and then used for the duration of the backup, especially during a full backup when all the data blocks are analyzed for deduplication benefits before being sent into our data store. That's a huge benefit doing it like this. And so this is something that we had from NetApp already. HP3 by Nimble have now been added. And just to add a little bit of meat, I wanted to show this quickly in a just where to find this in the UI so that you've seen this in case you need this. So storage areas are defined here in the infrastructure tab. You can do this directly from here by clicking at storage area, or doing it when you modify or create a plan. So the NetApp thing, that's the one we already had here, which with cluster support and vFiler support, and the new items here are HP for the 3-part support, and the one for Nimble storage here. And with Nimble, you see that similar to NetApp, you have the differentiation between the array IP and the data IP, which is used for the data access. Okay, so this is directly built in. And then once you are creating or modifying a plan, actually, let me just tag one of those. The whole configuration and then what you do with those backups is exactly the same as always. And the only thing that you need to look at is on the advanced tab of task 1, the backup advanced tab, there's the snapshot type for the backup, and here you can switch over to the hardware snapshots. That's how this works, and it's available for our host-based agentless backups of virtual machines, and it's also available for Windows-based agent backups, because there the hardware snapshot can also be utilized. Okay, so this is a quick show in the UI on where you find the UDP backup assisted by hardware snapshots. Next one, Office 365. So here we're backing up from Office 365. It's obviously a hosted software as a service environment, which means that we cannot install our UDP agent onto it in order to do a snapshot backup. Instead, the API is doing an item level backup, writes it into a recovery point, and stores it in our RPS. You see here in the diagram that there's the differentiation between the Windows proxy and the destination RPS, but in small environments, obviously, they can be the same machine. There's no problem with that. So restore goes back, and that's basically the functionality there. So let me show this to you in the UI as well. So I have here an Office 365 backup plan. And the way that works is that you set a backup proxy. The UI is exactly like with the agentless backups, because we also have the concept of a proxy backup. And here under the source configuration, you need to have, for a whole tenant backup, you would use an admin account. And then there's a setting in there that says protect all the Office 365 Exchange sources, and then all of them would be protected, or you select individual ones. I'm not an Exchange admin in the Arcserve.com tenant, so I can only see my own mailbox. But depending on the permissions, you would have the additional mailboxes here for you to select. Down in the, back out here on the source tab, there are some additional settings that you can do on the folder level. And all the remaining items like the destination, the data store, the password protection, and the schedule, they will look very familiar to anyone that has set up the other backup tasks like file agent-based backups or agentless backups. Okay, and very important is that obviously this is a file-based backup, but we write it into a snapshot, into a writable recovery point snapshot, so that it inherits some of the functionality that our customers already are used to from other backup types, like the ability to replicate it out or the ability to write it to tape. Okay, so that's Office 365. And the third new source-based feature is the integration of UNC path backups or CIFs inside the UDP console. It's very, very similar from an infrastructure and from a technology point of view to the Office 365 backup, because again, it uses a file-based reading approach, an item-based reading approach. It uses a proxy, because on the NAS itself, again, we cannot install an agent. So the job runs on the proxy, using an RPS as a destination. Those two could be the same machine, no problem at all. And yeah, that's the functionality here. So again, let's look at this in UI. So here is a UNC path backup. You will see that you can add any number of UNC paths into the same backup job. They would be executed by the same proxy. There's some exclusions down here based on dates or file size or a simple file name pattern that it looks at. The destination is an RPS with a data store, initially without dedupe. That's in this version. And here on the schedule, you will see a normal retention schedule. Down here in the number of recovery points, the execution up here with daily, weekly, and monthly if you want to add it in. So that's exactly like in all the others. Let's add a monthly backup in. And then this would enable down here the monthly retention, which by default is 12. You can generate a file system so that the catalog is already available for quick searching. You can do this individually on each of the backup schedule types. And there's some advanced settings as well, like a pre and post command. And again, we inherit functionality such as replication and copy to tape. Okay, that's the quick walkthrough on the UI for the UNC path backup. And that brings us to the details on the certifications. The Windows 2016 certifications are clarified here with the SQL and browser and UDP functionality support. We have vSphere 6.5. Where agentless is available, but not for encrypted VMs, those would be backed up with an agent inside a guest. We have some Linux Red Hat CentOS 7X compatibility, SUSE Linux Enterprise 12 Service Pack 2, and the Oracle Unbreakable Enterprise kernel, which previously we only supported the Red Hat compatible kernel on Oracle Linux. And that concludes the first section. And I hand back over to Christoph for the high-level overview on the second section.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kai. So, yeah, next we're going to talk about some of the new capabilities we have in 6.5 around cloud. And what I mean specifically here is the ability to do disaster recovery in public cloud environments, such as AWS, which is the focus of this version. So if I take your attention to the bottom of the slide for a minute, literally what we've offered here is the ability to use the AWS cloud as a remote DR site. At the same time, we're also doing that in a way that leverages the ability to run a virtual standby machine or an instant VM, therefore limiting or reducing the compute requirements. So to recap, up to this point, you could, from UDP, in previous versions, run a recovery point server in EC2 with a compute and a storage, just as you would on-premise. And that would give you, because of the great deduplication capabilities that we have, a very efficient solution that would literally be that DR site for you. But you would have to use compute, which of course has a cost. You could copy files and folders selectively into S3 prior to this version, which is great, but again does not give you the whole backup. And now with 6.5 you can do a few things that are different, as I explained. In EC2 environments, you can essentially leverage the ability to spin up a virtual machine. So copy a recovery point into EC2, or multiple recovery points as a matter of fact, and those are essentially mounted on a virtual machine for recovery purposes, just as you would with our virtual standby or instant VM capabilities. Same principle. And Kai will show you this in a little more detail. In addition, we can also copy a recovery point, a full recovery point, to AWS S3. So S3 is the less expensive storage option, The benefit of this is that literally this could replace, for example, a tape backup. If you did a monthly, or some people like to do it twice a month, whatever the case may be, or the frequency may be, this is a good way of potentially replacing a tape environment if that's what you're trying to do. So when you look at this, really what we've achieved here is a much deeper level of integration with Amazon environments, and really given you the full benefit of the feature set of UDP into this Amazon environment. I know there'll be questions around other public clouds, and we'll cover those in the question sections, but just know that this is only a starting point. We're starting with Amazon, but of course there'll be more in the future. Kai, why don't you take us through some of the details?
Happy to do so. So let's go into the first one, copy recovery point. So here the idea is that we upload an to the S3 storage blob, a full recovery point. Those that have seen the UI in the past know that the copy recovery point feature has already been available in the past, but until this version, the destination was always just either a local drive, so it could have been maybe a USB drive, or a local UNC path, so maybe on a NAS share, so we could write a recovery point. And another limitation in previous versions was that the scheduling wasn't very elegant. So both of those items have been enhanced. This destination can now be the Amazon cloud with the S3 storage, and the scheduling, and you see this here on the screenshot already, can now be done individually based on daily, weekly, and monthly, so that this as a task 2 benefits from all the scheduling that is done in the task 1 on the backup. The idea is obviously that here we send data to a cheap storage that doesn't cost us any monthly or weekly or hourly compute cost, and we have this data available in case there is like a full site disaster, like a building fire, or maybe a break-in with equipment theft, or maybe an administrator going rough and removing stuff. So this will be by some customers, it will be used as a replacement for creating tapes and sending them off-site, just because by definition the Amazon S3 storage will always be in a geographically separate location from your on-premise environment. Okay, next up is the virtual standby and instant VM. So here, again, both features are existing features of Arcserve. So we had virtual standby since actually before the whole solution was called UDP, and instant VM since version 6.0. And both features until now were only compatible with on-premise hypervisors, either VMware, vSphere, or Microsoft Hyper-V. And now the new addition is that we can do those two functionalities into the Amazon EC2 environment to bring up and stand up a DR as a service inside AWS. So that's basically the functionality here, and I think it's best explained with a diagram that walks you through how exactly this will work. So in the case of virtual standby, that's part of a plan. Ideally, you would have a second RPS running inside Amazon. And if that's the case, then obviously the replication from the first RPS, which is in your primary site that receives the backup, to the second one, this replication is always optimized for RAN. It's always global dedupe. And hence, very bandwidth saving, a way of sending the data over in a bandwidth sensitive manner. And then this RPS can either use a separate proxy, or it can itself act as the proxy for converting it into a Windows Server instance, and then boot it up when required. That's the virtual standby configuration. Here, the proxy does a conversion into EC2 volumes, and they will then be attached to a fresh instance and boot it up. That's how virtual standby works. Now, in the case of Linux, we're using the instant VM functionality, and in that case, we are not writing the EBS volumes first. We are actually booting up a Linux environment that has the ability to directly have access to all the data and basically on demand in the background filling that data up. That's how the instant VM for Linux works already on-premise, and now that same concept has been brought over to Amazon EC2. So we have a Linux proxy that does this management and configuration here, and it can read the data either from an RPS or from a remote RPS if it has to, or from S3 storage. So the functionality here is quite flexible. But in essence, what both methods have in common is that we're bringing back a whole system back to life and using Amazon Web Services as our DR platform. And that concludes section number 2 on cloud features, and I think we are up for section 3. Over to you, Christoph.
Thank you, Kai. And indeed, we are getting to our third and final section, which is new features around reporting and what I call disaster recovery orchestration. We also have a number of other enhancements that we'll cover in this section. So let's get into the details of this. We have had for a while a feature or capability that we call assured recovery. This capability was available originally in our high availability module, and it is now available in UDP. What this means is that we can allow you to run disaster recovery tests in a non-disruptive fashion and in an automated way, meaning that you essentially will get the assurance of the ability to recover. This is done on, of course, non-production systems. We leverage a number of technologies under the hood, as well as our scheduler to do so, and we give you a couple of options in terms of how you want to test. And the benefit of this is that it really gives you this ability to prove to yourself, to your management, and from just a management perspective, in general terms of the data protection plans, that things are working the way you want them to, and that the data and the systems can be recovered. Combine that with our new capabilities around reports, and you have a very interesting combination here. We have just introduced with 6.5 recovery time objective and recovery point objective reports. And really, I should call them RTA and RPA, because what we're doing is we're measuring the actual recovery points and recovery times, and we're comparing them to the objectives that you set. So the benefit here is that you actually get a report that can compare where you want to be versus where you are, and that gives you a very good communication tool to go talk to your boss, talk to a business owner or business line manager about their business and their data exposure. And that's another way of looking at this. And of course, we give the ability to drill down and double-click and triple-click on those reports to understand the root of the numbers that are produced. Finally, we have a number of other efficiency features that we have included in 6.5. Many of those come from your suggestions and your feedback, so please keep the feedback coming. And I'm not going to go through all of them here. You can see what they are, and I'll let Kai actually cover the details. Kai?
Thank you, Christoph. So let's look a little bit more into a short recovery on what it does, how it looks like, and I forgot in the previous section to look into the UI. Let's do this again now. So a short recovery is the first one that we're going to check here. So this is an automated testing. So this is whenever we automate something, we do this configuration inside a UDP plan. So a short recovery is now a new task that can be added into UDP plans. The schedule then can be set on that plan level, and it will provide us with a peace of mind that our recovery point is actually functioning the way we need it to. The SLAs can then test against that, but more important than the SLA is that the test actually starts, and for that, there are two methods how we can do that. One is just the mounting of the recovery point, and the other one is actually booting up an instant VM of a recovery point. So those are the two tests, and in terms of diagram, this is how it looks like. So we have our backups. They could be physical or virtual. They could be Windows or Linux. All of that is supported. And my recovery point either replicates into another one first, or itself can do the tests. So if it's an instant VM one, then it boots it up on a hypervisor. and automatically checks that the backup is in a good state. And if so, it will mark that recovery point as tested. It's actually stored alongside with the data in my data store. And yeah, I wanted to show you this a little bit in detail. And also the other one that doesn't require a hypervisor. So let's start with this one that uses the hypervisor for instant VM tests. So you see here that I'm not doing this locally. My initial backup is into my manager, but I'm then replicating it into a second data store on my RPS-R remote RPS, and then on that I'm executing the assured recovery test. So that's my task 3 here. I set here the schedule for this, and here are the test settings. So here up, the first item is the test type, and that's where you select between instant virtual disk, which is just mounting the recovery point and running a check disk, and instant VM, which is actually starting it up and booting it as a system. And then obviously for instant VM, you have to select the hypervisor type that you use for the testing and some of the details. And you have a separate schedule if you want, but as always with the schedule of task 2 or 3, if there's no schedule defined here, then they will just run automatically following the schedule of task 1. So whenever task 1 is finished, it will replicate. Whenever the replication is finished, it will run the assured recovery tests. That's how this works. And then in addition to the automatic settings, you have a custom command that you can run and some timeout settings. So that's assured recovery for a disk. And I have a similar one here for the disk check. Sorry, the other one was for a VM, instant VM. This is the disk check. And here under test settings, you see that I'm using instant virtual disk that runs on a proxy in a temp folder. And under the advanced tab, you can see that I can verify the file system and run a check disk command against this whole volume. And this is basically kind of testing that we can do. And then if we go in our plans, let me just show you how this looks like. So you have an additional little tick box for the assured recovery in here. You have the assured recovery job as its own task together with a log that can be searched. And the same obviously for this one that boots up the system. And then here you will see that assured recovery will obviously, while booting the system, take a bit longer. So in my case, it takes around 3 minutes until the system is booted up. And it does this after every recovery point, always checking that the latest recovery point is bootable and the heartbeat of the VM is detected. So you see this information here, and that's basically telling me that my recovery point from this SQL server is a good one that is ready for either instant VM or a VM restore or maybe a BMR. But I know that the data there is viable and can be used for restores. And that brings me assured recovery, and that's exactly why this is called like that. Okay, back to my slides, because they have, you know, once you do testing, the reporting becomes really interesting. That's what Christopher already told us. So on top of the testing, we can then have SLA reports and some other reports. And I think I show most of them in the UI just in a second, but the UI that I'm using is relatively fresh. So it will not have this long history of 2016, December, November, and, you know, 12 months back of recovery points. So let me just show you the recovery point objective report here. This is how it looks like when the system has been upgraded. And you see over the months how many recovery points per month you see. And I think the other ones I explained in the UI. So let's start with the SLAs actually. So SLA profiles are set here in the UI. There's a new section for that. You can have as many as you want, and you would give them certain recovery time objectives for any of those 5 restore types, and the first one is the short recovery test itself. You then assign nodes into them, like so, and those nodes that are assigned to the SLA will be checked against those values whenever any of those restore types or the recovery, the short recovery test is run. And then based on that, you get the reporting. So let's look at this. My recovery time objective report will show me pie charts for each of them, and then have details. And obviously, if something wasn't tested, so if I've not done a VM recovery or BMR, I wouldn't be able to see them here. But for those that I've done the tests, it will show me that you know, how long it actually took and if the SLA was met or not. That's the high-level report on this. The recovery point objective report is also new, and that's the one that we already had in the slide, but with a longer history. So this is how it looks like with a relatively fresh system. You see that I don't have any 2016 recovery points, but I only started like in mid-January taking backups, so that's why this looks like this. But it is interesting to see here that I have my recovery points either within 15 minutes or at least within a day. And that's good because that means that nothing kind of has slipped out. I don't have any backups that are growing old and are not replaced with a fresh recovery point, which you would spot in this slide if any of those nodes would count in any of those columns here. You might see some older recovery points in some systems if you decommission machines that you then no longer create new backups for. But then this is perfectly normal and you would automatically see this because obviously for those columns here, you have the details down here. And here, obviously, in this environment, the age of the oldest recovery point is just 30 days, so you don't have a big spread. But if I go back into the slide, you see that here there was actually the age of the oldest recovery point. I even had one recovery point that is older than the 5 years, which is the last column here that has some details. So that's something that where in 2012 I did a backup, and I still keep this recovery point. I migrated it from a normal NAS storage into an RPS so that it gets deduplicated, and I still have it around. So this is how the age of the oldest RP will show me the diagram. It's very important when you talk about recovery point objective that always both items are looked at, the age of the newest, which would describe my data loss if I would have a BMR now, and the age of the oldest, which describes my flexibility with regards to jumping back in time. Okay, so this is RPO and RTO, and the dashboard shows it like this. There's one more report that I want to show, and that's the job status report. The job status report is an answer to everyone that says, oh, I have so many nodes, and each of them is configured so that I get an email alert, which then means I get like 20 emails or 50 emails or 300 emails every night, and I have to look through them manually to see which of them are failed or not. Now you can just have a single email, because the job status report gives you exactly this, a status across all the nodes. You can configure it so that it emails it out to you using the, once the email settings are set, you schedule this up here. I think for sending it out, you would probably look at just 1 day here. And then basically you get a big list, and here under the job status you see if the jobs have been successful or not, and you will be easily see those that have not in the pie chart if there are any. That's how this will look like, and this concludes my little demo on the new reporting. So we've seen the assured recovery testing, and then the RPO and RTO reports. The recovery point objectives are automatic. The RTO reports are based on the SLAs that we are setting. And we have the job status report, and all three of them show up in the dashboard. Okay, next slide is on the other enhancements. So let's quickly look through some of them. We now have a way of automatically protecting newly added VMs. So you can select like a whole cluster or a folder, and it would back up everything within that entity. We can do direct fileable restores from HNS backups back into the VM without having to install anything. We can replicate on one RPS between different data stores. That's also new. We have single sign-on. That's actually one of my most favorite features. It means that when you come to the login page, like so, you don't have to type the username and password. You just log in with Windows credentials, and like this, I'm directly in. Really nice. And the next one is the pausing of a single node. That's obviously very good for large accounts that have lots and hundreds of nodes in a single plan. You can pause individual nodes now without having to require the post over plans. File recovery has a new flag where the ACL is stripped off during the restore. We have a license entitlement portal that gives you automatically the licenses, so you don't have to type in license keys anymore. We have more flexibility on languages. That's especially great here in Europe. That's then the language setting during the setup is saved into a registry key. Changing that and restarting the services will change back the language to another one, which is sometimes good if we want to capture English logs for troubleshooting purposes. The sister and monitor item links have changed ever so slightly. Let me show this here. Going out of full screen. So previously, the log or the entries here, they were still pointing all to the local agent entries. We have put them into the submenu, and the top menu item here is now opening the UDP console, which in most large environment is exactly what you need. We have disk reclamation logs now inside the normal logs item here. So if I am here and I'm searching for, I think it's called purge. Yeah, and here you see the purge maintenance cycle where my data stores are reclaiming disk space when data has been removed. This was previously only visible in system level log files, but now it's available here in my UI log. And we have also much better backward compatibility when you upgrade. The experience with 6.5 will be much better than with 6.0. 6.0 didn't allow for any coexistence of old agents. 6.5 has some backward compatibility, even though we still strongly recommend for you to upgrade all of the agents and RPSs as soon as possible. There's a specific section for what is included and in what order to do that in the release notes. And one aspect of why this is important is obviously the security fixes. Okay, that's my details on the other enhancements. And Christoph, I'm going to quickly run through the licensing, if that's okay with you. Yeah. So we have new functionality that is available to any of the editions, and the UNC path backup, many of the small environment enhancements. There's no license implication, obviously, on restores. All of that is available in any edition. The UNC path as a new source is available also in any edition, and it would just simply be counted against your meter. The auto VM protection is an advanced feature, and instant VM has already been an advanced feature in the previous version. So the combination of Amazon EC2 system restores between virtual standby and instant VM is also an advanced feature. Similar to that, we made the Oracle Linux unbreakable enterprise kernel support an advanced feature. This typically goes along with Oracle, so that fits the advanced versus standard combination quite well. And alongside 6.0, requiring the premium edition for the hardware snapshots of NetApp, of course, the HP3 binding with snapshots fall into the same category, so that's a premium feature. And the assured recovery tests, which are new with 6.5, they are also a premium feature. All of that is completely in line with everything that we had in the past. So the additions, those 4 software additions, stay exactly the same. The way how we sell them, either per terabyte or per socket, stays exactly the same. So there's no confusion with the upgrade. Everything is relatively easy because there's really just the new features that are kind of distributed as you see it on the screen, and everything else stayed the same. Just one note, with the UNC path backup, we're counting the data as terabytes, obviously, but if it's the per socket licensing that is in use, then every NAS will be counted as a single socket. I think that's very fair. If you have multiple shares on the same NAS, that would only take 1 license. And I think that's quite nice because then we don't need to introduce a new license type for that. We couldn't do the same with the Office 365 backup though, because Microsoft runs Office 365 actually across a huge cluster with lots of sockets, and if we would count them all in, then this would probably be way too expensive for our socket customers. So the Office 365 backup is completely aligned with the license meter that we have with the appliance and managed capacity, where we just count the data or fill the appliance. But for socket and per OS license customers, we made Office 365 an optional purchase. There's just a single SKU in the price book. It's a pack of 10 mailboxes or 10 users, and yeah, there's a version obviously for 1 year and 3 years. And that's the licensing changes. And with that, we come to the summary.
Thank you very much, Guy. Thank you for the great demos directly into your test environment. So just to summarize before we go into questions, we have with 6.5 really demultiplied the capabilities of UDP. We've built on our existing replication and deduplication, virtual standby, and instant VM to really provide you with the ability to now leverage those in a much more efficient fashion in public cloud environments, such as in Amazon with our virtual standby, instant VM in EC2, and the ability to really copy recovery points into S3 or EC2. We have certainly hardened the product in terms of the coverage of platforms. It supports from a protection perspective, so more integration with hardware snapshots, as you've seen with 3PAR and Nimble, and there'll be more to come, as well as a number of new capabilities around protection of NAS environments with our support for CIFS and network shares, essentially. And finally, the great advances in automation of disaster recovery testing with assured recovery, which is, again, now in UDP, integrated in UDP, not just the optional high availability option you had before, and the great reports that Kai demonstrated for you around service level agreements, meaning the ability to measure your recovery point objective and the actual results that you get, and same thing for the recovery time objective. Many other enhancements as well that will help make the product easier to use and further, and also the ability to deploy it in a way that's going to be very efficient for you. So there are a number of questions that have come on the little interface, and if you would please keep adding to them, we'll start going through some of them. I don't know if we'll be able to get to all of them, but if not, for sure what we'll do an individual follow-up. So as long as we have your email, we'll follow up with you, and if your question hasn't been answered, we'll do this individually. All right,
yep.
So
do you want me to take the first ones? Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
So Stuart was asking, when can we download this version through the UDP console? I checked for updates, but I didn't find anything yet. So I can explain that. We count 6.5 as a major version. That actually also means that the licensing is different between the two. And for that reason, a customer that would have 6.0 right now, but would not be under maintenance, wouldn't be allowed to use 6.5. So only for customers that are under maintenance, they would be able to request the free of charge upgrade license certificate and then have the license to run 6.5. And for that reason, we're not actively pushing it out as an update to our 6.0 customer base, and instead it's just a new download. If you find on the marketing web pages the trial download, that would be the same as finding it from the download section in our support section, and then it would be an in-place upgrade. It would automatically keep all your settings, and by default, when you install it on top of 6.0, it would just behave like from a licensing point of view, it starts a 30-day trial of version 6.5, and you have basically those 30 days to sort out the license certificate, which is a simple request into our auto processing team to give you a new certificate. That's how this works. And another question we have is, do we still have a free version for workstations? And yes, I can confirm we have this. I actually like that a lot. I use this at home and with my family. So it's not a separate version though, so that's a small correction. It's exactly the same. So the way that UDP works is the agent, when it gets deployed to a Windows Workstation OS, and that could be Vista, Windows 8, or Windows 10, I think Windows 7 as well, it will automatically recognize that it runs on a workstation OS, and as long as the destination is not an RPS, then it would automatically run as the workstation free edition. That's how this works. So you use a USB disk or maybe a local NAS as your destination. All of that is supported. You can do the bare metal recovery, including to smaller disks. Maybe if you have a laptop that you want to migrate from a spinning hard drive to an SSD, our UDP agent and the BMR works great for that. You can do all of that for free. And it's fully automatic and exactly the same software as you would use on servers, exactly the same agent. Okay. Then with regards to backward compatibility, I had a question if an agent is not upgraded, if it can still communicate with the RPS after the RPS was upgraded. Yes, that is possible. So there's a separate section in the release notes just on how backward compatibility works and what order we recommend for the upgrade. But yes, this works, even though we definitely recommend upgrading all the agents as soon as practical. Okay. There's like a ton of additional questions. Some are asking for the slides and also for the v6.5 edition comparison. We will check on the partner portal that the latest 6.5 information is there. So obviously, if you see a slide on our editions and it doesn't have what I just had on the licensing slide, so the new fixtures of 6.5, then this is the old content, or the new 6.5 content should have this comparison inside that slide deck. Okay. Then there's a question on the appliance, and if the appliance comes with the Office 365 mailbox backup, yes. That from a licensing point of view, it's fully included. There's no limit on the amount of mailboxes, but obviously the appliance has a certain capacity, and the way this works is that you can fill the Arcserve appliance with as much data as it can fit, and that's basically your license entitlement that comes with the Arcserve appliance. Can you use Windows 2000 Server 16 as a recovery point server? Yes, that's supported. I think I had this in the section of certifications. So the UDP console, the agent, the RPS, or the proxy, all of that can run on Windows 2016 now with this version. There's also obviously a compatibility matrix that we typically post for each version separately that will show that in detail. Okay, what about the job status report? Can I then turn off the individual email alerts? Yes, that's the idea of that. So if you set up the job status report to be sent out to you as a single email, then obviously it makes sense to review what kind of alerting you keep enabled in the individual UDP plans. That's correct. Then the question, is there a way of having a virtual standby in a DR site that is not based on a heartbeat? So the heartbeat that is set up for automatic switchover for virtual standby, I think that's optional. So if you don't like the heartbeat-based backup, then you can obviously keep this disabled. I'm not sure if this answers the question, but the virtual standby can obviously then also be done manually, just either starting it from the UI, or I'm not sure right now if that's exposed in our command line as well to run a short recovery, but I'm guessing that yes. I have to check this. Okay, I think I'm already through some of the questions, but there's probably no way we might make it through all of them. So Christoph, why don't we take the other questions on an individual basis? Many thanks if you've sent one in. Really appreciate all this. And yeah, I think with this, Christoph. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kai. Well, thank you, everybody, for your questions. And again, many questions are coming through now. So what we'll do is we'll do individual follow-ups. And for those of you who want the slides, we'll actually send you, I believe, in the next hour, a couple of hours, an email with the link to this session. Understand that the demo piece of it is not going to be on slides. For those of you who want a PDF format, I'm sure we can accommodate that. So please work with us, and we'll send that your way. But again, this will be available as a replay. And for those of you who have questions around our support on Azure, again, we'll individually follow up with you. But just know that what we're going to be doing with our solution moving forward, as we've done in the past 2.5 years, is we try to maintain an equivalent level of feature functions across our hypervisors, OSs, and cloud environments. So, as I said, you can expect that we'll be doing very similar things in other environments moving forward. I'd like to turn it over to Raki now to close this call.
Thanks, Christoph. Thanks, Kai. That was a great presentation. As I mentioned earlier, the presentation is recorded and we'll be sending this out to you very shortly. So do keep an eye out for that. If you have any additional questions, you can start a chat on arcserve.com. There's a list of local phone numbers as well, so feel free to give us a ring. We'd love to hear from you. And if you'd like to get your hands on the 5 trial, it's available on the website for you to download right now. Thank you very much for attending and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.